Hi, I'm Joshua the Anarchist.
And I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P.
And we're here to discuss voice acting and the Oscars. So, the way this topic first came about, which I think would be a good place to start,
that is a good place to start at the beginning.
Alright, right. For a lot of people, myself included, the best Joker of all time, regardless of genre, is Mark Hamill.
I agree. Well, I still like Heath Ledger.
Oh,
but that's a
no disrespect to the others. I mean, they're all great. Heath Ledger, Jack Nicholson, Cesar Romero, all great Jokers. But for a lot of people, just based on the fact that he is the only one that is able to merge the scariness of the Joker with the humor of the Joker in a way that completely works. He can do either one.
Right.
And therefore, for a certain extent, has a lot more range than any of the others. For a lot of people, he is the best Joker of all time. No disrespect to Heath Ledger, but he is the greatest Joker of all time. Now, here's the thing. Technically, while yes, he mostly played it on television, technically, the Joker was in a theatrically released movie. He was in Batman Ask the Phantasm. Now, granted, this movie kind of flew under the radar mainly because they really mishandled the release of it. I mean,
there was also Batman Forever that came out at the same time, and people were expecting that to be the better Batman film.
Right.
Lo and behold.
Right. But the point is, Mark Hamill has been able to give this performance, which many people would say exceeds Heath Ledger's, on the silver screen. Now, why shouldn't he be eligible for an Oscar for that?
Well, voice acting in animation has always been split between two people. There's a voice actor who does his own thing, who is given the task of looking at this character that isn't animated yet, or usually they show practice footage of the pencil animation. Sometimes the animation's done first, and then the voice acting's done later. And this was mainly done in the Popeye cartoons, which is why Popeye the shorts are famous for those famous quips that look like they're out of sync. That's because the Fleischers would go through the process of the animation first before doing the voice acting. And there's the other way around, which is voice acting coming first, and then the animator coming in to capture the voice actor's mannerisms. However, traditionally, it's split between the two because, again, it's the animator's interpretation of what the voice actor is doing, and there is sometimes a disconnection between the two. That is why when people get bummed out when it comes to most animated films having celebrity voiceovers, because they're probably just doing it just to show up for the hell of it. I just want to make a movie for my kids, and it's the animator's job. He'll do his own thing. He'll make me a funny-looking fish. And you know, in some ways, you put a lot of responsibility on the animator. And I guess that's probably the idea. So I guess the question you're asking to begin with is why Mark Hamill wouldn't have been considered best voice acting. I guess it would have to be a combination between voice actor and animator. And in some ways, you look at motion capture today. Motion capture is a good harmony between voice acting, professional acting, and physical acting, which actually brings up another argument: is motion capture an animation format like a rotoscoping, or is it just an extension of movie costumes and prosthetics?
Or does it just prove that there's really not any significant difference when you get right down to it? I mean, the idea of Andy Serkis, the fact that he's both a voice actor and a regular actor to a certain extent.
Yeah, Andy Serkis is certainly pioneering this motion capture. I would not be surprised if the Annies or the Oscars will make an Andy Serkis award for rotoscoped or motion capture design.
True. Although that does bring up a good point, is the fact that if they were to start giving voice actors Oscars, which they don't to this day. I mean, the only even acknowledgement of animation is their nice little box of Best Animated Feature. But there's no awards for voice actors, and even if they were to give awards to voice actors, which I believe they would still never be eligible for a Best Actor. They would, at best, only be able to hope for Best Voice Actor. Because we put animation in this little, animation is just put in its little box.
Personally, it's a change in medium for most people. It is its own medium of filmmaking. With live action, you're given a set to work with. You're given a production. You're given all those things you know in advance. Whereas in animation, you literally create a world with its own physics. Sometimes the animated world can have physics that says, "Physics? What's that?" Other worlds that do try to focus on realistic-looking, actual physics, defeats the purpose of being animated, in my opinion. And I guess to go back as far as there being a voice actors and animation being in this box. Funny you mentioned that because I actually remember going to a panel today since we are at a convention.
We're at MagFest 2013.
And someone asked the question if they're mentioning how sci-fi films were in a sci-fi ghetto, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's ironic, or that's coincidental, because every time I talk about animation, we always talk about the dark ages of animation, television animation, and, you know, it's made for kids and all that fun stuff. So I guess it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
But I guess back to the point, because I seem to go off topic a lot. That's kind of my shtick.
Yeah.
I already know anybody's shtick who's just passionate about one thing. But otherwise, what I wanted to go over is that as far as there being a voice acting category in the Oscars, it would also have to be a marriage between that and the animators. And I do believe if you watch the Annies, correct me if I'm wrong, the Annies is an award show that sponsored for animation. And I do think they celebrate voice acting in that award show as well.
Yeah.
But as far as the Oscars goes, there's always the stigma.
Yeah.
Like, have you looked at the category? The classifications for an animated film are just so they're crazy. Because sometimes you'll have live action animated hybrids that qualify for Academy Awards.
Right.
Like, technically, Ted would qualify for an animated film because of the fact that Ted, the animated character, is showing up for a majority of the film, and it is an animated character in the movie, even though he is his body animation is motion capture. Right. Which recently, or I guess it's not so recent, because you remember that big movie Avatar. You remember? Yeah, that movie. Apparently,
I think I heard of it at some point.
See, going back, it's similar. It's a similar argument you have about voice acting category, because I remember reading an article once that said the Academy nominates two animated films for Best Animated Feature. Yeah. One was Up, which was nominated for Best Film, Best Picture. Yeah. And the other one was Avatar. And at the root of it all, you can make the argument that this is animation. However, James Cameron comes in and says, no, this can't qualify as animation. Yeah. Which is hence why it wasn't nominated in the Best Animated Feature category. And he was pioneering that, this is a new technique, whereas the animation was made in advance. These are special cameras, magical cameras that made the worlds of Pandora. Now, this is my personal, most humblest opinion. Animation, at the root of it all, is creating the illusion of life with inanimate objects. Right. And you can play with that concept in any way, shape, or form, which is why the Muppets always get thrown in and about. Puppetry is always getting thrown in and about on the subject matter. Yeah. And in some ways, seeing. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that there is a stigma against animation. Right. And Avatar was an example of that. Yeah. If only it would have been nominated for Best Animated Feature, it would maybe. I'm not sure it would actually turn any heads, but I would have preferred that. Yeah, it would have been interesting, but James Cameron has the kind of clout that he can pretty much just say. Oh no, it's not animation. This is magic. Yeah. We made Blue Cat people. We went to the stars and we did our special magical cameras. Yeah. But going back to what you said about a marriage between the animators and the voice actors, I think a lot of the stigma against letting voice actors be considered in the same category as, even just casual, forget the Oscars, just in casual conversation, they're not even mentioned in the same breath. Right. And part of that is because people are like, okay, well, but they're only doing half the job. It's half of it is the animators doing all that. But at the same time, that is ignoring the fact that, an actor is only as good as his director. That's correct. In many cases. Daniel Day-Lewis, did a great job in Lincoln this year, for example. But I might want to interrupt if you don't mind. Okay. I might want to mention that the directors of animated films are never first-time people that come into it. Yeah. Usually they find people that have been in the business of animation for a while, which is why it's relatively new that you're finding like Zack Snyder directing an animated film. Yeah. Or remember when the Farrelly Brothers directed Osmosis Jones?
Oh man, I completely forgot that movie
I guess
existed.
it might support your argument about the voice actor being as good as his director, because I don't think he gave his voice actors any motivation. Just read your lines like yourself, and we'll just have the animator do the work for you. Like, you had the William Shatner character being made into a William Shatnerish character.
Yeah.
It was very contrived.
Yeah.
Using some special filmy vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that voice acting does not get a lot of respect. I mean, there was that thing...
Oh, respect.
At the last Oscars, you had that thing where Chris Rock was like, anybody can voice act. And I remember Tara Strong took umbrage with that, and good on her. Because she is one of those voice actors that has been doing this forever and is extraordinarily talented, can do any number of roles. But when people like her find themselves in big-budget cinematically released films, at best they're a side character or background voice. You know, just, we need somebody unimportant. Because there's so few voice actors that are big names that most people know. Seth MacFarlane is probably, speaking of Ted, Seth MacFarlane is probably the most well-known voice actor on the planet right now.
I guess maybe
he is pretty much the only one to have achieved that kind of star status.
Yeah,
for voice acting.
I guess it is kind of a sad thing that you look and see Jim Cummings. That's not a household name, and he's been in the business for like 30 plus years.
Yeah,
doing very iconic characters.
Oh yeah.
I remember reading a story that he would read to sick children at hospitals in the voice of Winnie the Pooh through the phone, and he would make those children's day. That is awesome. That's commitment.
Yeah.
And yet he's probably doing what he does.
Yeah.
But going back to Seth MacFarlane, now there's a guy who goes from cartoons to hosting the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
In some ways that's a big leap for animation, but in some ways it's 10 steps back when you look at the quality of his work.
Well, I quite enjoyed Ted. In fact, it's my.
Oh no, I'm not saying Ted was bad, but when you go to Fox Network, there is a lot of animation that's being produced on it, but it's a specific type of animation that people feel. I guess people feel comfortable with, which is, this is raunchy, pushing envelopes because characters say pussy, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Say no words.
Right.
And do no things.
Yeah, true.
As opposed to just pure character.
Yeah, I mean, he's a genuinely talented voice actor, but he's never given... his work is not usually the best. I mean, I think Ted is probably the best thing he's ever done. And I'm not suggesting that his performance in Ted was Oscar-worthy, like he should get a Best Actor nomination for that. But just say for the sake of argument that we had been so moved by his voice acting as Ted, that and the way it coincided with the animation of the character, that we thought this guy definitely deserves a Best Actor nomination.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't go as far as to say they give him a Best Actor nomination for Ted, but I guess for argument's sake, if he was doing a lot of acting in the role itself, because there was a portion of motion capture that was involved with the character. I would also say, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking more about the film now. Now I'm just hung up about Ted. Any final thoughts in regards? I would like to see a Best Voice Acting, maybe even Best Animation Acting category, as opposed to just Best Voice Acting and Best Animator in the Oscars. Because when you look at visual arts and the history of animation, you have a medium as old as film itself. And you get a construct, and at times a dated construct of what it really is. This is kids stuff. This is a kids movie, and the whole family should watch this sort of mentality. It's going away though. I mean, animation's a genre. A medium? No. Genre. Family fantasy. So
and regardless of what the Oscars do, I would like to see more animation studios take chances on giving a lot of these veteran voice actors who have been doing this for years starring roles for once, and not feel they need to rely on having a bunch of non-voice actors who are big names in it just to put butts in seats.
Exactly.
To slowly give them the recognition they deserve, so maybe someday Tara Strong can be a household name, Jim Cummings can be a household name.
We're looking at you, Larry the Cable Guy. All because you're doing your shtick as a tow truck doesn't make you a good voice actor.
No.
Not at all. Nah. Is that all you got?
That's all I got.
Oh, that's all I got too. I'm good for the day.
All right.
Let's go watch some cartoons.